So I entered in add numbers together and clicked go, and then you can see that right here from select a function, it lists a number of different functions from in the most relevant order, and right there the sum function, that makes sense because the sum is what numbers are added together. So when you add numbers together, you come up with a sum. So the sum function makes sense. So we can click on that, press OK, and then you can see our function's argument dialog box comes up. Now let me delete this. I do have tutorials that go into more detail on functions, but the sum, we're going to find the sum of certain numbers. So I'm going to enter in my argument. So you can see it says number 1. So that's the first number we're going to add together. We'll select the cell. Then cell number 2. We can select this cell, cell number 3. For number 3, we can select cell D4. We're going to keep selecting cells for our arguments, and then we can press OK, and it will find the sum. Now an easier way to do this is click Insert Function, and we can just, instead of adding a series of numbers, we can, since all of our numbers are together, we can just select a range of cells, just like that, and press OK, and it will work just as good. You can also enter in functions manually, equals sum. Once you know them, once you're familiar enough with your functions, you can enter them manually instead of having to search. You have to open your parentheses. With functions, you always have to open and close parentheses. Open your parentheses and select your cells. That's a range of cells, and then close your parentheses and press enter, and you have the sum. There's other functions such as the product function. You can just type it in, or if you don't know it, you could have opened up that insert function dialog box like I just did and said you could have just entered the word product in description and press go and did the same thing. Alright, so we're going to open it up and we're going to multiply whatever numbers we want to multiply together. If our cells are not right next to each other, then we have to separate the cells that we're going to do by a comma. So I'm doing finding the product of cell B4 and cell D4, and then I close my parentheses. So to separate each argument, and you can see the result, we need to separate each argument with a comment. And also, not all functions can use a range of cells as an argument. For example, this is a more complicated function, but the if function, if it's a logical test, let's say if 20 is greater than 19, and then I select that, I separate it, then the value will be 20, 20, or the content within cell B4. So that's saying if cell B4 is greater than 19, then the value will be the content within cell B4. If not, we'll just say it'll be 0. Okay, with a function like that, the if function, we could not use a range of cells. It wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't make any sense, basically. Okay, so I've covered the basic operators in Excel and how to find functions, so you should have a decent understanding of how to use functions. Functions can also, when you're doing functions, let's just say I have I'm going to enter in some content here. Whoops. Here again, I'm going to use the autofill. Look at that, week 2, week 3, or week 4. Just keep messing with autofill on your own, and you'll see income, expenses, and let's say I'm doing this by week. All right, 600, 700, 500, 300, expenses, 200. I'm just entering in random numbers. Right arrow, entering in some more numbers. Okay, another thing with functions is that you can also use autofill with functions. So let's just say surplus, and I'll do a equals income minus expenses and hit enter. Okay, you see I have my result. Well, I can drag a formula over or a function, and it's going to find my result. Now let's say that our income is the same every week, but our expenses are different. Okay, again, let me show you the clear content. I'm just selecting some home, clear content. All right, let's just say that our income is the same every week. So I don't need to enter in the income every week. Now I'm deleting that cell. I'm clicking on a row. I'm going to delete this row. I'm clicking on the row, right click, and delete row. I'm going to go over that again. You can see that made it screwed up our formula because the cell that our formula referred to no longer exists. Let me go ahead and delete all the content in there. I can just right click also. So I selected all my cells, right click, and not delete, that's going to delete. I select all my cells, right click, and I'm going to select clear contents. Okay, so over here, let's just say income. I'm making a box for income. Ignore all of these. This is just from the previous. I'll just clear them so they don't get confusing. Okay. Weekly income. Okay, another thing to make content fit. You can see how this goes into the next cell. All I have to do is select that, and you see I'm going to hold my cursor right over the very right border of that column that I want to make it fit, and double click there. Alright, so weekly income, let's just say every week it's the same, our check is the same, $600. So what I can do is I can say equals cell A5 minus our expenses for that week. Our expenses change, so we have to enter in new expenses every week, but we don't have to enter in new income. Alright, now watch what happens whenever I drag this formula over, right? I should be able to drag it over. But no, there's a problem. That doesn't make sense. See, 600 minus 250 is not negative 250. So we want our result to be, what happened here was, you can see that when we dragged it over, alright, we're referring to cells. So the content within this cell, it worked fine. But since we dragged it over, it also dragged the formula over. So now the formula here is referring to cell B5 minus cell D7. But there's nothing in there. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that our formula is locking. We're referring to this cell and it's locked. So what I do is I'm going to hit equals. I'm going to select that cell, and then I can hit F4. And that, whenever we drag formulas over, it will never, with those dollar signs, you can also manually enter in the dollar signs before the column and before the row number. Now when we drag our the content over using autofill, it's not those cells locked in, so that will always refer to cell A5. Alright, so minus cell C7, and watch, now we drag it over, and our formula is always locked in cell A5, and you can see our result is accurate. Okay, so now you learned a little bit about cell reference and formulas and referring to cells. That's probably the most important thing you need to know about Excel. All right. Next thing I can go over is formatting cells. You want to make your worksheet look presentable. Let me clear all my content again. I'm selecting arrange the cells that contains content, right click, and then I'm clicking on clear content. Alright, income, make a quick little budget, and then rent, utilities, I'm just entering in my data, car payment, insurance, groceries, okay, and all the other stuff.